This matter of Zen is difficult to convey, even through direct question and answer between teacher and student meeting face to face. It becomes all the more difficult, indeed impossible, to transmit through a messenger, no matter how sincere or capable that messenger might be. Having delivered this response, the master said nothing more. He simply sat in silence, embodying the very teaching he had just articulated. The gentleman waited, perhaps expecting elaboration or alternative suggestions, but none came. Eventually, finding himself speechless and somewhat confused, the gentleman bowed politely and withdrew from the temple. The Buddha once said, "Be a lamp unto yourself." This profound truth reveals itself in Bankai's gentle but firm refusal to reduce Zen wisdom to a message that could be carried by proxy. Spiritual awakening cannot be transmitted second-hand because it is not information, but transformation. You cannot eat for another person and expect them to be full. Nor can you wake up on someone else's behalf. Why do we often approach spiritual learning as if it were academic knowledge that can be collected and conveyed through intermediaries? Zen Buddhism teaches that awakening is not a concept to be understood, but a reality to be directly experienced. Like the taste of water to someone who is thirsty, it cannot be adequately described. It must be felt on the tongue, cooling the throat. The Baron's question about the nature of consciousness reveals our typical approach to spiritual inquiry. We want to understand awareness intellectually, to grasp it conceptually, to possess it as knowledge. But consciousness cannot be made into an object of study because it is the very subject doing the studying. It is like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. The seeing itself is what you are trying to see. Consider how often throughout your day you might approach spiritual wisdom as information to be collected, rather than truth to be embodied. We read books about meditation instead of meditating. We study descriptions of enlightenment instead of investigating our present experience. We seek answers about the nature of mind instead of directly examining what we call mind right now. This tendency to look outside ourselves for what is already within creates an invisible burden, a weight that grows heavier the longer we refuse to look at it directly. In a serene monastery garden, where morning dew glistened on carefully tended paths, a young seeker once approached his teacher with a question weighing heavily on his heart. His eyes reflected both determination and confusion as he bowed respectfully. "Master," he said, "I wish to understand my path on earth better. Why do I seem to carry my past and relive it again and again? Why can't I get past my past?" The master studied the young man with compassionate eyes, then gestured toward an intricate maze of translucent silk panels shimmering in the garden's filtered sunlight. "Go forward into the maze," he said, reaching for a leather backpack. "But carry this as you walk. It will help you stay focused. Be careful, though, as it is quite heavy." The young man accepted the backpack, initially surprised by how easily the master handed it over. But the moment it settled into his grasp, he gasped. The weight was extraordinary, forcing him to bend forward as he struggled toward the maze. Inside the silken labyrinth, he immediately encountered solid walls. Through the translucent material, he could see other seekers navigating their paths like distant ghosts, their forms blurred and indistinct. No matter which direction he turned, every path seemed blocked. Exhausted, he sat down to think. "Others are clearly ahead of me," he thought. "Should I cheat and crawl under the silk?" After wrestling with these thoughts, he chose integrity. As he stood with renewed resolve, an opening magically appeared. Progress felt rewarding until he faced another wall. This time, good intentions yielded no results. The backpack's weight became unbearable, cutting into his shoulders. What could be so heavy yet feel so soft? Overcome with curiosity, he removed the pack and peered inside. It was completely empty. Yet, when he lifted it again, the weight remained undeniable. As he placed it back on his shoulders, a voice whispered clearly through the rustling silk. "Look inside of you, young man, for the weight lies there." Suddenly, memories flooded his consciousness. His childhood tormentors, accumulated hurts and resentments carried for years like jagged stones. As he relived each painful experience, the backpack grew heavier, pinning him toward the earth. Then, understanding dawned. I am the weight, he realized. I carry the burden of that which troubles me. With this insight, he began the work of forgiveness. I forgive you, wherever you are, he found himself saying to the shadows of his past. Immediately, the pack lightened, and new pathways opened within the silk. As sunlight warmed his face and he remembered moments of love, the weight continued diminishing until the backpack felt weightless. Finally, surrounded by solid silk walls, he sat in meditation. I recognized that I was the impediment, not anyone else. At these words, his feet began rising from the earth. He floated above the maze, seeing how others remained trapped by darkness in their own packs. This lightness is not a gift from the outside, but the natural state of a mind that has stopped clinging to its own shadows. Yet, even when we let go of the past, our present perceptions can still lead us into traps of our own making. In a mountain monastery where silence was treasured, there lived a monk renowned for strict adherence to Buddhist precepts. One moonless night, returning from evening meditation, he walked slowly along the garden path. The darkness was complete, broken only by faint outlines of familiar landmarks. Suddenly, his foot came down on something soft and yielding. The object made a distinct squishing sound that pierced the quiet like a bell. The monk froze, his heart racing as his mind conjured the most likely explanation. He had stepped on an egg-bearing frog. The realization struck like a physical blow. The first precept forbids taking life, and here he was, a dedicated practitioner, having just killed a pregnant creature. Not only had he taken one life, but potentially dozens of unborn ones. Horror washed over him in waves. He knelt in the darkness, trying to determine what happened, but the night was too black to see. His mind spun with recriminations. How could he have been so careless? Sleep became impossible. When he finally lay down, his mind churned with guilt. In his dreams, hundreds of frogs appeared, their eyes accusatory, demanding justice for their fallen mother. The monk woke repeatedly, each time remembering anew what he believed he had done. His carefully cultivated peace was shattered, replaced by a torment that grew stronger with each passing hour. As dawn broke, painting the monastery gardens in soft, golden light, the monk returned to the path, his steps heavy with dread. But when the morning light revealed the truth, he stopped in complete astonishment. There lay not the remains of a frog, but an overripe eggplant that had fallen from the monastery garden. The purple vegetable had split open when he stepped on it, creating the squished sound that had triggered his night of anguish. In that moment of recognition, he felt a sudden shift in understanding. For the first time in years of study, he truly grasped the teaching that there is no objective world separate from our thoughts. His entire night of suffering had been created not by external reality, but by his mind's interpretation of an ambiguous experience. He had been haunted by a ghost made of purple skin and seeds. Why do we construct elaborate stories from incomplete information? Our minds evolved to make rapid assessments for survival, often filling gaps with worst-case scenarios. This mental habit creates unnecessary suffering when applied to modern psychological situations. We step on metaphorical eggplants in the dark every day. A friend doesn't return a text, and we assume we have offended them. A colleague seems distant, and we convince ourselves they are plotting against us. Each scenario follows the same pattern: ambiguous input, followed by mental interpretation, followed by an emotional reaction to the interpretation rather than the actual event. We suffer not from what happens, but from what we think about what happens. We mistake the finger for the moon, and in doing so, we lose the light. In a peaceful valley monastery, a beloved Zen teacher enjoyed his daily ritual of walking with his faithful dog. On one particular evening, he invited one of his most promising students to join them. The young man was brilliant, his mind sharp as a blade. Yet this very intelligence had become a source of suffering. The more he studied Buddhist texts, the more contradictions he discovered. "Master," the student voiced his frustration, "I struggle with these teachings. Some speak of emptiness, others of Buddha nature. How can these opposing instructions both be true?" The teacher listened, understanding that intellectual brilliance could become a trap. "You must understand," the teacher said gently, "that words are only guideposts. Never let symbols get in the way of truth." The teacher called his dog. The full moon hung low in the sky, its silver light emerging as the day faded. The teacher pointed directly at the luminous orb. "Fetch me the moon," he commanded. The dog's response was immediate. His gaze fixed intently on the teacher's outstretched finger, following its movement with focused attention. The animal's entire being concentrated on the pointing digit, completely oblivious to the moon hanging magnificently above. The teacher turned to his confused student. "Where is my dog looking?" The student observed the scene. "He's looking at your finger," he replied. "Exactly," the teacher confirmed. "Don't be like my dog. Don't confuse the pointing finger with the thing being pointed at. All our words are only guideposts. Every person must fight their way through other people's words to find their own truth. This truth, however, is not a gentle intellectual discovery. It often requires a desperation that most of us are afraid to feel." Beside a crystal-clear mountain river, a hermit had established his practice. One morning, a young man approached him, his face earnest with spiritual longing. "Master," the young man said, "I wish to become your disciple. I want to find God." The hermit looked up, studying the newcomer. Without warning, he grabbed the young man by the neck and dragged him toward the river. Before the visitor could protest, he found himself being pushed into the cold water. The hermit's strong hands forced the young man's head beneath the surface and held him there. Panic set in immediately. The seeker's lungs began to burn as his oxygen depleted. He kicked and struggled with increasing desperation, his arms flailing as he fought to break free. Every second felt like an eternity as his body screamed for air. Nothing existed except the urgent, overwhelming need to breathe. After what seemed like a lifetime, the hermit finally pulled the gasping young man up. The seeker coughed violently, water streaming from his nose as he struggled to fill his lungs. When his breathing finally normalized, the hermit spoke, his voice carrying an unmistakable intensity. "Tell me," he said, "what did you want most of all when you were underwater?" The answer came without hesitation. "Air." The hermit nodded slowly. "Very well. Go home and come back to me when you want truth as much as you just wanted air. The hermit's lesson brought the young seeker face to face with the death-like quality of authentic spiritual work, leaving him to wonder if he truly possessed the fire required to burn through the illusions of his own making. This fire of dedication, when misapplied, can easily transform into a suffocating obsession that poisons the very beauty we seek to protect. In the rolling countryside of ancient Japan, where autumn mists drifted through carefully manicured estates, there lived a wealthy baron whose passion bordered on a quiet, refined madness. His mansion was a monument to luxury, but it was the rear garden that captured his heart completely. There, row upon row of chrysanthemums bloomed in magnificent splendor, their colors ranging from deep purple and regal bronze to golden yellow and pristine snowy white. The baron devoted endless hours to cultivating these flowers, studying each variety with a scholarly intensity and nurturing each plant with a parental tenderness that eventually eclipsed his love for his own family. His knowledge was encyclopedic, and his dedication was absolute. Yet this very devotion had transformed from love into something darker and far more restrictive. The baron paid more attention to his chrysanthemums than to the needs of his wife or the laughter of his children. His household lived in a state of constant, trembling fear, knowing that a single misstep near the precious flowers could result in severe punishment. Many faithful retainers had felt the stinging lash of his wrath for accidentally brushing against a leaf or breaking off a single blossom. The atmosphere of the estate had become oppressive, filled with a thick layer of anxiety and resentment that choked the life out of the home. One autumn afternoon, disaster struck. A faithful retainer, while hurrying to complete his duties under the baron's watchful eye, accidentally brushed against a prized chrysanthemum, breaking off its perfect, heavy bloom. When the baron discovered the damaged flower, his rage was volcanic, shaking the very foundations of the house. The retainer was immediately imprisoned for this innocent accident, but the punishment felt so disproportionate that the man's shame transformed into a desperate, cold anger. According to the warrior code, he resolved to protest this injustice through ritual suicide, preferring the finality of death to such a hollow humiliation over a mere flower. Word of this impending tragedy reached Zen Master Sengai, a teacher known for his unconventional wisdom and deep compassion. Understanding that a man's life hung in the balance over botanical beauty, Sengai hastened to the estate. He successfully prevented the suicide, but the master knew that saving one life would not solve the deeper sickness of the baron's heart. Sengai devised a radical, shocking solution. On a rainy night, when the chrysanthemums were at their most glorious peak, he sneaked into the baron's garden carrying a sharp, curved sickle. Working methodically in the darkness, he cut down every single chrysanthemum in the garden. Hundreds of flowers, representing years of obsessive cultivation, were reduced to a heap of wet petals. The sound awakened the baron, who rushed to his window and saw a shadowy figure standing in the center of his ruined paradise. Grabbing his sword, he ran outside in a blind fury, demanding to know what this intruder was doing. Sengai stood calmly amid the devastation, surrounded by the fallen blooms that had once been the baron's world. Even weeds like this eventually become rank if they are not cut, he replied, with a stillness that pierced the baron's rage. In that moment, the baron's obsession shattered like thin glass. Seeing his precious flowers reduced to mere weeds in the master's eyes, he suddenly understood the profound distortion in his own perception. It was like awakening from a long, fevered dream. From that night forward, the baron never raised chrysanthemums again, for he had finally learned that true beauty cannot be possessed, and what we cling to eventually becomes our master. This internal training of the spirit is far more vital than any attempt to force the external world into compliance. Zen master Bankai once observed a scene that mirrored this struggle for control. From his resting place on an embankment, he saw a warrior brutally beating his horse. The animal's cries mixed with the sharp, rhythmic crack of a whip and the angry, guttural shouts of a man who had lost all control of his own emotions. Each blow seemed to make the horse more agitated rather than more compliant, creating a vicious, spiraling cycle of violence and resistance. Unable to remain silent, Bankai called out, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" The warrior, absorbed in his own fury, ignored the interruption. The beating intensified. A second time, Bankai's voice rang out, and then a third, carrying the unmistakable authority of someone who had spent decades cultivating the silence within. This time, the warrior stopped. He climbed down from his horse and approached the embankment, his face flushed with a mixture of shame and lingering aggression. Bankai looked at him with a gaze of pure compassion, seeing not an enemy, but a man caught in the same trap of frustration that entangles us all. His response was simple, yet life-altering. Rather than beat your horse for being unruly, why not chastise yourself and train your own mind? The warrior stood frozen, the whip hanging limp in his hand. He had been trying to solve his problem through external force, never realizing that the horse was merely reflecting the chaos in his own heart. This training of the mind is not a matter of following a rigid map, but of learning to trust the natural territory of existence. Consider the two city dwellers who once found themselves completely lost in a vast, ancient wilderness. They had ventured into the timber for a simple hike, but overconfidence had led them far from the trail. For a day and a night they wandered, their anxiety growing as every tree began to look identical and every path led to another confusing intersection. Just as panic was beginning to take hold, they stumbled upon an old hermit sitting peacefully beside a small clearing. "How do we find our way back to civilization?" they asked urgently, their voices cracking with exhaustion. The hermit looked at them with eyes that seemed to hold the stillness of the mountains. "I could tell you," he replied thoughtfully, "but you would still get lost." The men were confused, expecting a list of directions. "What should we do then?" they asked. "Go with the flow," the hermit answered simply. When they pressed him for a more practical answer, he gestured toward a small, cheerful stream bubbling through the clearing. "Follow that stream. Streams go into creeks, and creeks go into rivers, and rivers go through towns. Along the way, you will have water to drink and berries to eat." One of the men, who had studied a bit of philosophy, asked, "Is that what Zen people mean when they say, 'go with the flow'?" The hermit smiled enigmatically as he stood up to continue his walk. "Yes and no," he replied, leaving them to discover that the stream was not just a path to a town, but a lesson in trusting the innate wisdom of life's current. This current, however, is always colored by the internal landscape we carry with us. A wise Zen master once ran a modest tea stall by the side of a busy road, where two different travelers approached him at different times, both seeking a new home. The first traveler arrived with a tense expression and a suspicious gaze. "I'm thinking of moving to this town," he said. "What's it like?" The master asked, "What was your old town like?" The man's face twisted with bitterness. "It was dreadful. Everyone was hateful, unfriendly, and selfish. I couldn't wait to leave." The master nodded sadly. "This town is very much the same. I don't think you should move here." Later that day, the second traveler arrived, his manner relaxed and appreciative. He asked the same question about the town. When the master asked about his old home, the man's eyes lit up. It was wonderful. The people were kind, the neighbors were like family, and I was very happy there. The master smiled warmly. This town is very much the same. I think you will like it here very much. Both men were looking at the same town, yet they would have experienced two entirely different worlds. We do not see things as they are, we see them as we are. To truly see the town, or the stream, or the horse, requires the courage to let go of the anchors of our own prejudices. In the depths of a great crystal-clear river, there lived a village of small creatures who spent their entire lives clinging tightly to the stones and roots on the riverbed. They believed that the current was a dangerous, destructive force that would smash them against the rocks if they ever let go. For generations, they taught their young that safety lay in the strength of their grip. But one small creature grew tired of the endless struggle to hold on. "I believe the current knows where it is going," he announced. "I'm going to let go." His neighbors shrieked in terror, predicting his immediate demise. He released his grip and was indeed tumbled and bruised against the rocks at first, just as they had feared. But as he refused to grab for a new anchor and surrendered completely to the water, the current eventually lifted him higher. He stopped striking the stones and began to float, moving with the elegant, effortless power of the river itself. To the creatures still clinging below, he appeared to be flying, a miracle they could never experience, because they were too afraid to trust the very element that sustained them. This surrender does not mean that we will never encounter pain, but it changes how that pain tastes. A young apprentice once approached his master, his heart overflowing with complaints about the hardships of his life. "Master, the world is too bitter. My body aches, the people are difficult, and I cannot find peace." The master instructed the boy to bring a handful of salt and a small glass of water. "Put the salt in the glass and drink it," the master said. The apprentice did so and immediately spat it out. "It is disgusting. It is pure bitterness." The master then led him to the shores of a vast, still lake and told him to throw an identical handful of salt into the water. "Now, drink from the lake," the master said. The apprentice drank and sighed with relief. "It is cool and sweet." The master looked at him and said, "The pain of life is like this salt, no more, no less. The amount of difficulty in the world is constant, but the bitterness you taste depends entirely on the container you put it into. When you have a small, contracted mind, every little problem becomes an overwhelming poison. But when you expand your awareness, when you become like this vast lake, the same amount of salt dissolves into something much greater. Stop being a glass of water. Become the lake." This expansion of the heart allows us to hold the contradictions of existence without being shattered by them. Yet, even as we grow, we must eventually face the most profound question of all. Who is the one doing the growing? This question is the very thorn that Zen seeks to pull from our hearts. For we often spend our lives collecting teachings like precious artifacts, memorizing the eloquent quotes of masters, analyzing intricate meditation techniques, and meticulously comparing one tradition against another. All of this can be immensely valuable, a necessary scaffolding for the soul, but it becomes a subtle prison when we mistake the accumulation of spiritual knowledge for the actual lived experience of spiritual development. The great Zen teacher D.T. Suzuki famously reminded us that the finger pointing at the moon is not the moon itself. This simple truth applies not only to sacred texts, but to every corner of our existence, where we confuse the map for the territory. In our relationships, we can become so preoccupied with analyzing the dynamics and the psychology of our connection that we lose the raw, immediate touch of actually loving the person standing before us. In nature, we might become so busy capturing the perfect photograph, framing the sunset through a digital lens, that we miss the shivering wonder of simply being present in the fading light. The moon, in this ancient metaphor, represents what Zen calls our original nature, the pure, unconditioned awareness that exists prior to all our concepts, categories, and labels. This awareness is always present, as constant as the moon in the sky, whether or not anyone is there to point at it or even notice its glow. It does not need to be manufactured through effort or achieved through merit. It only needs to be recognized beneath the layers of our mental chatter. This does not mean we must abandon study or intellectual inquiry. For the teachers themselves used words and concepts as the very tools of their lessons. Rather, it means holding our conceptual knowledge lightly, using it as a ladder to reach the roof, and then having the wisdom to leave the ladder behind once we have arrived. Tonight, as you move through the inevitable complexities of your modern life, can you begin to distinguish between the pointing fingers and the reality they point toward? When you seek guidance or immerse yourself in teachings, can you remember that the words are merely echoes, fingers pointing at the moon of your own innate silent wisdom? The Buddha's wisdom teaches us to work out our own salvation with diligence, and that work involves moving through the teachings to the reality they indicate. But this movement requires a level of intensity that few are prepared to offer, a truth illustrated by the tale of the drowning lesson. Beside a crystal-clear mountain river where the water flowed over stones worn smooth by centuries of current, a hermit had established his solitary practice. For years he had lived in the rhythm of the flowing water and the changing seasons, finding in them a perfect mirror for the movements of his own consciousness. One morning, as the golden sunlight filtered through the canopy and the air carried the fresh, sharp scent of mountain laurel, a young man approached the hermit's simple dwelling. The seeker had traveled a great distance, his clothing thick with the dust of the road, his face etched with an earnest, almost desperate spiritual longing. He bowed respectfully and said, "Master, I wish to become your disciple." The hermit looked up from his contemplation, his eyes accustomed to reading the subtle signs of genuine versus superficial interest. "Why?" he asked simply. The young man paused, searching for the most noble response he could summon. "Because I want to find God," he said finally. What happened next took the seeker completely by surprise. Without a word of warning, the hermit sprang to his feet with the agility of a mountain cat, grabbed the young man by the scruff of his neck, and dragged him toward the river. Before the stunned visitor could utter a single protest, he found his head being forced beneath the surface of the clear, cold water. The hermit's grip was like iron. Panic set in almost instantly. The seeker's lungs began to burn as his oxygen depleted, and he kicked and struggled with increasing desperation, his arms flailing against the weight of the master. Every second felt like an eternity as his body screamed for air. In that moment, nothing else existed. No philosophy, no questions about God, no spiritual longing. Nothing except the urgent, overwhelming, primal need to breathe. After what seemed like a lifetime, the hermit finally pulled the gasping man from the water. The seeker coughed violently, water streaming from his nose and mouth as he struggled to fill his lungs with the precious air. His entire body shook from the shock of the near drowning. When the young man's breathing finally normalized, the hermit spoke, his voice gentle but charged with an unmistakable intensity. "Tell me," he said, watching the seeker's face, "what did you want most of all when you were underwater?" The answer came without a second of hesitation, raw and honest. "Air." The hermit nodded slowly, satisfied that the lesson had found its mark. "Very well," he said. "Go home and come back to me when you want God as much as you just wanted air." Without another word, the hermit turned and walked back to his place of meditation, leaving the dripping, shaken man to contemplate the profound truth he had just received. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle without shortening its life. But that wisdom must be ignited by a genuine spiritual fire, not merely a casual intellectual interest. The hermit's dramatic lesson illuminates the difference between a passing curiosity and the total commitment that authentic awakening requires. It is a recognition that spiritual seeking demands the same intensity we naturally bring to physical survival. We often want awakening as an addition to our lives, a pleasant decoration rather than as life itself. We often approach our development with a tentative commitment because of our deep attachment to comfort. Genuine transformation requires us to let go of who we think we are, a process the ego experiences as a kind of death. We also tend to compartmentalize our spirituality, treating it as one hobby among many, rather than a complete reorientation of our existence. We collect techniques like trophies, jumping from one retreat to another, accumulating experiences without allowing any single practice to fundamentally dismantle our illusions. We want the insurance policy of peace without paying the premium of total dedication. The drowning experience represents what the mystics call the dark night of the soul. Those moments when our usual sources of identity and security are stripped away and we discover what we truly value. This intensity does not mean our practice should be grim. Rather, it means bringing the same passionate engagement to our inner world that a musician brings to a masterpiece or a scientist brings to a breakthrough. The river is the flow of ordinary consciousness, where we skim the surface, while being pushed underwater symbolizes the necessity of going deeper into the unconscious patterns that govern our lives. Yet, as we cultivate this intensity, we must also learn how attachment can poison the very things we claim to love. In the countryside of ancient Japan, where autumn mists drifted through manicured estates, there lived a wealthy baron whose passion for beauty had bordered on obsession. His mansion was surrounded by rolling hills, but it was the rear garden that held his heart. There, row upon row of chrysanthemums bloomed in magnificent splendor, their colors ranging from deep purple to golden yellow and pristine white. The baron devoted endless hours to these flowers, studying each variety with scholarly intensity and nurturing each plant with parental tenderness. However, this devotion had curdled into something dark. The baron paid more attention to his chrysanthemums than to his own family. His household lived in a state of constant anxiety, knowing that a single misstep near the precious blooms could result in severe punishment. Many retainers had felt his volcanic rage for accidentally breaking a single blossom. The atmosphere of the estate had become oppressive, filled with resentment and fear. One autumn day, a faithful retainer, hurrying to complete his duties, accidentally brushed against a prized chrysanthemum, breaking its perfect head. When the Baron discovered the damage, he roared for the man's confinement. The punishment was so disproportionate that the retainer's shame transformed into a desperate, cold anger. According to the warrior code, he resolved to protest through ritual suicide, preferring death to such humiliation over a mere flower. Word of this impending tragedy reached Zen Master Sengai, the teacher known for his radical compassion. Sengai understood that a man's life hung in the balance over botanical beauty, and he hastened to the estate to prevent the suicide. But the master knew that saving one life was not enough. He had to uproot the cause of the suffering. On a rainy night, when the chrysanthemums were at their glorious peak, Sengai sneaked into the garden carrying a sharp sickle. Working methodically in the darkness, he cut down every single chrysanthemum, hundreds of flowers, representing years of obsessive cultivation. The sound of the sickle awakened the Baron, who rushed to his window and saw a shadowy figure in his beloved garden. Grabbing his sword, he ran outside, demanding to know what the intruder was doing. Sengai stood calmly amid the devastation, surrounded by fallen blooms.
Even weeds like this eventually become rank if they are not cut,
he replied with perfect equanimity. In that moment, the Baron's obsession shattered like glass. Seeing his treasures reduced to mere weeds in the master's eyes, he suddenly understood the distortion in his own perception. It was like awakening from a fevered dream. From that night forward, he never raised chrysanthemums again. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering, and this truth reveals itself in the way we transform love into possession. The Baron genuinely loved the beauty of the flowers, but his attachment had turned that appreciation into a source of fear for everyone around him. Why do we confuse love with possession? The ego seeks security through control, attempting to make permanent what is inherently impermanent. True love appreciates without grasping, while attachment tries to freeze beauty in place.
We see this in parents who suffocate their children's growth out of a desire for control, or partners who create a prison of jealousy. The chrysanthemums represent anything we elevate beyond its proper place, our careers, our appearance, or even our spiritual achievements. Sengai's radical action reminds us that sometimes we need external circumstances to strip away what we are clinging to before we can see clearly. This shattering of the ego's grip on external beauty leads us to a deeper realization about the source of our daily frustrations, a truth found not in the garden, but in the wild, unruly movements of our own thoughts. In a remote mountain region where execution grounds served as sobering reminders of mortality, a Zen master sought to test the depth of his realization. For several nights, he sat in meditation beneath a crucifix, using the proximity of death to penetrate the nature of existence. After completing this retreat, Master Bankai found a peaceful spot on an embankment surrounding a horse corral. As he rested there, absorbed in profound silence, a harsh sound shattered the peace. From within the corral came the violent sounds of a warrior brutally beating his horse. The animal's cries mixed with the sharp crack of a whip and the angry shouts of a man who had lost all self-control. Bankai observed the scene with growing concern. Each blow made the horse more agitated and resistant, creating a vicious cycle of violence. Unable to remain silent, Bankai called out, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" The warrior, lost in his rage, ignored him. The beating intensified. A second time, Bankai's voice rang out with the authority of years of inner peace. "What do you think you are doing?" Still, the warrior continued, his frustration fueled by the horse's panic. A third time, Bankai's voice cut through the air. This time, something in the tone penetrated the warrior's fury. He stopped, climbed down, and approached the embankment. "You were yelling at me," the warrior said,
his voice still trembling with anger. "Do you have something to tell me?" Bankai looked at him with pure compassion, seeing a man caught in the same cycle of frustration that traps us all. His response was simple. "Rather than beat your horse for being unruly, why not chastise yourself and train your own mind?" The words hung in the air like a bridge between two worlds. The warrior had been trying to solve his problem through external force, but Bankai was pointing to the internal conditions that create our suffering. We cannot successfully force the world to conform to our expectations through aggression. Why do we instinctively blame the horse, the external circumstance, for our frustration? The untrained mind seeks to maintain its comfort by controlling its environment rather than developing the flexibility to respond skillfully. This is what Zen calls pushing the river, exhausting ourselves by trying to force reality to match our preferences. The computer that crashes, the traffic jam that makes us late, the family member who doesn't listen. In each case, we are like the warrior beating the horse, applying force to the outside while ignoring the storm within. The horse represents the uncontrollable aspects of life, the weather of existence. As Pema Chodron writes, "You are the sky and everything else is just the weather." The real training involves learning to work with our own minds, developing a spacious awareness that remains calm regardless of the conditions. This doesn't mean being passive, but rather approaching challenges from a place of inner stability. Tonight, as you reflect on the areas of your life where you feel the urge to lash out or control, can you consider the possibility of training the rider instead of the horse? Buddha's wisdom teaches us that hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is a law eternal. The path to peace lies not in conquering external conditions, but in cultivating the inner qualities that remain stable regardless of what the world presents. This shift in perspective, from the external horse to the internal rider, is the hallmark of a mind beginning to wake up to its own power. It is an invitation to explore the difference between a superficial understanding of life's rules and a deeply lived wisdom that flows from the heart. Consider for a moment the vastness of a wilderness where towering pines stretch toward an endless sky. In such a place, two city dwellers once found themselves completely lost.
They had ventured into the high timber for what was supposed to be a simple day hike, but overconfidence and poor preparation had led them far from any familiar trail. For a day and a night, they wandered through the dense forest, their anxiety growing with each passing hour. The comfortable urban world they knew seemed impossibly distant. Every tree looked the same. Every path led to another confusing intersection, and their sense of direction had completely abandoned them. Just as panic was beginning to set in, they stumbled upon an old hermit sitting peacefully beside a small clearing. His weathered face spoke of years spent in solitude, and his calm presence offered immediate comfort to the desperate travelers. "How do we find our way back to civilization?" they asked urgently, their voices carrying the desperation of people who had exhausted their own resources. The hermit looked at them with kind eyes that seemed to see more than their immediate predicament. "I could tell you," he replied thoughtfully, "but you would still get lost." The two men exchanged confused glances. This was not the straightforward directions they had hoped for. "What should we do?" they asked, their frustration evident. "Go with the flow," the hermit answered simply. "I beg your pardon?" one of them responded, clearly expecting something more practical and specific. The hermit smiled and gestured toward a small stream that bubbled cheerfully through the clearing. "Go with the flow. You see that stream over there? Just follow it. Streams go into creeks, and creeks go into rivers, and rivers go through towns. Also, along the way, you will have water to drink and berries to eat. This practical advice made immediate sense to the lost travelers. Following water downstream was indeed a reliable way to find human settlements, and the stream would provide essential resources they needed for survival during their journey. But one of the men, perhaps having heard spiritual teachings before, asked a deeper question. Is that what Zen people mean when they say, "Go with the flow"? The hermit paused for a moment, considering this question with the same careful attention he had given their practical need for directions. "Yes and no," he replied enigmatically, and then continued along his way, leaving the two men to find their own understanding of his words. The Buddha once said that if you understand, things are just as they are. If you do not understand, things are still just as they are. This teaching points to the layered nature of wisdom that the hermit embodied in his response to the lost travelers. The deeper teaching here shows us how authentic spiritual guidance operates on multiple levels simultaneously. The hermit's advice was both completely practical and profoundly metaphorical. On the surface level, following the stream was simply good wilderness survival strategy. On a deeper level, it represented the entire approach to living that Zen encourages. Why did the hermit say the travelers would still get lost even if he gave them directions? This points to a fundamental truth about the difference between receiving information and developing wisdom. External directions can guide us temporarily, but they do not develop our inner capacity for navigation. Real wisdom involves learning to read the natural signs and flow with the underlying currents of life itself. Consider how this applies to our spiritual seeking. We often approach teachers and teachings looking for specific directions. Tell me exactly what to do to become enlightened. Give me the precise meditation technique that will solve my problems. But this approach, while understandable, misses the deeper point. True spiritual guidance does not provide a map, but teaches us how to read the territory. It does not give us someone else's answers, but helps us develop the capacity to find our own. Like the stream that naturally knows its way to the ocean, we each have an innate wisdom that can guide us if we learn to trust and follow it. The phrase, "go with the flow," has become so common in popular culture that it has almost lost its meaning, often interpreted as passive resignation or a lack of direction. But the hermit's yes and no response points to a more nuanced understanding. True flowing is not about drifting aimlessly, but about aligning our efforts with the natural currents of wisdom and compassion. The stream represents the Tao, the natural way that underlies all existence. When we align ourselves with this deeper flow, our actions become effortless and effective. We stop pushing against reality and learn to work with the grain of existence rather than against it. But this requires developing a different kind of intelligence than our usual problem-solving mind. The travelers wanted explicit directions because that is how the rational mind works, through clear, step-by-step instructions. But the deeper intelligence the hermit was pointing toward operates more like intuition, sensing the right direction moment by moment, rather than following a predetermined plan. This is why contemplative traditions emphasize present moment awareness. The stream does not need to know where the ocean is. It simply flows in the direction that feels natural right now. Similarly, when we develop moment-to-moment mindfulness, we can sense the appropriate response to each situation without needing to figure out the entire journey in advance. Tonight, as you navigate the complexities of your own life, can you sense the streams of natural wisdom flowing beneath the surface of your daily concerns? What would it mean to trust that deeper current while still attending responsibly to practical necessities. Buddha's wisdom reminds us that thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. The hermit's guidance was like lighting a candle in the traveler's minds, providing not just directions, but a way of approaching life that could serve them in countless future situations. Our inner landscape constantly shapes our outer experience, often in ways we are completely unaware of.
In a bustling marketplace where merchants hawked their wares and travelers stopped to rest on their journeys, a wise Zen master had established a modest tea store. People came not only for refreshment, but for the master's reputation for offering practical wisdom to those facing life's transitions and uncertainties. On this particular day, 2 different men approached the master's stall, each carrying the same question, but embodying very different energies. Both were considering major life changes. Both were strangers to this place, and both sought guidance about whether this town might become their new home. The first man arrived with a tense expression, his shoulders carrying the weight of accumulated frustrations. As he approached the tea stall, his eyes darted around suspiciously, already assessing and finding fault with what he observed. "I am thinking of moving to this town," he announced without preamble. "What is it like?"
The Zen master looked at the man with gentle attention, noting not just his words, but the quality of energy he brought to the question. Rather than offering an immediate description, the master asked his own question. "What was your old town like?" The first man's response came quickly, as if he had rehearsed these complaints many times. "It was dreadful," he said with obvious bitterness. "Everyone was hateful and unfriendly. The neighbors were inconsiderate, the shopkeepers were rude, and the whole place was full of selfish, unpleasant people. I could not stand it there anymore." The master nodded thoughtfully, his expression remaining compassionate despite the negativity pouring from his visitor. "This town is very much the same," he replied simply. "I do not think you should move here." The first man's face darkened with disappointment and frustration. Without another word, he turned and walked away, muttering under his breath about how this place was probably just as bad as everywhere else. Shortly after the first man departed, the second traveler approached the tea store. His manner was notably different, relaxed, curious, and open. His eyes took in the surroundings with appreciation rather than judgment, and when he smiled at the master, it seemed to come from a place of genuine warmth. "I am thinking of moving to this town," he said cheerfully. "What is it like?" The master regarded the second visitor with the same careful attention he had given the first, again choosing to learn more before offering his assessment. "What was your old town like?" he asked. The second man's face lit up as he considered the question. "It was wonderful," he said with obvious fondness. "Everyone was so friendly and helpful. My neighbors looked out for each other. The local merchants knew everyone by name, and there was a real sense of community. I was very happy there. I am only considering a change because I am looking for new adventures and opportunities." The master smiled knowingly. "This town is very much the same," he told the second man. "I think you will like it here very much." The second man's face broke into a delighted grin. He thanked the master warmly and walked away with a spring in his step, already seeing possibilities and connections in his new environment. Buddha's wisdom teaches us that all that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. What we think, we become. This ancient insight illuminates the profound truth demonstrated by the master's seemingly contradictory responses to the 2 travelers. Here we discover one of the most fundamental principles of human experience. we do not see the world as it is, but as we are.
The master gave identical answers to both men, because he recognized that their questions revealed far more about their internal states than about their external circumstances.
Why do some people find community and kindness wherever they go, while others encounter hostility and disappointment in the same environments? Buddhist psychology explains that our perceptual filters, shaped by our habitual mental patterns, literally create our experienced reality. We notice evidence that confirms our existing beliefs while filtering out information that contradicts them. The first man carried what modern psychology might call a negative attribution bias, the tendency to interpret ambiguous situations in the most negative possible way. His mind was like a magnet for negative experiences, not because the world was inherently hostile, but because that was what he was conditioned to see.
The second man demonstrated the opposite pattern, a generous attribution style that assumed the best in others and looked for positive connections. His mind was attuned to kindness and possibility. Consider how this plays out in daily life. Two people can work in the same office and have completely different experiences. One sees politics, competition, and dysfunction everywhere. The other finds mentorship, collaboration, and growth opportunities in the same environment. This does not mean that objective conditions do not matter or that all experiences are equally positive. Rather, it points to the enormous influence our mental habits have on shaping our lived reality. As the Zen teacher Jon Kabat-Zinn famously said, "Wherever you go, there you are." We carry our internal weather with us, and it colors everything we encounter. The master's wisdom lay in recognizing that no external change of location could solve the first man's problem. If he moved to this town with the same negative perceptual filters, he would recreate the same disappointing experiences he was trying to escape. This insight has profound implications for how we approach life changes and problem solving. Often, when we are unhappy with our circumstances, our first instinct is to change the external conditions. But if we do not address the internal patterns that created our dissatisfaction, we simply recreate similar problems in new settings. But this principle works in both directions. When we cultivate mental habits of appreciation, curiosity, and goodwill, we begin to notice more evidence supporting those perspectives. The world does not magically change, but our capacity to see its positive qualities expands dramatically. Tonight, as you reflect on your own experiences of community, work, and relationships, can you notice the interpretive lens through which you typically view these interactions? Are you more like the first traveler, scanning for problems and disappointments, or the second, looking for connection and possibility? The most powerful tool for transforming our external experience lies not in changing our circumstances, but in changing the quality of awareness we bring to whatever circumstances we encounter. This requires the courage to trust life's current, much like the creatures in a great crystal river. In the depths of that river, where water flowed clear as mountain air, there lived an entire village of small beings. The river's current moved above them like a gentle breath, carrying the wisdom of countless springs and distant seas. Young and old, rich and poor, all made their home along the sandy bottom, each creature grasping tightly to stones, branches, and roots. For generations, clinging had been their way of survival. Every creature learned from birth to wrap their appendages around river rocks and fallen wood. "Hold on," the elders would say. "The current is dangerous. It will sweep you away to places unknown. Safety lies in staying exactly where you are." But one small creature grew weary of this endless grasping. Day after day, he watched the current flow overhead, seeing how it moved with such purpose and grace. While his neighbors complained about the effort required to maintain their grip, he found himself wondering,
what it might feel like to trust that flowing water. "I am tired of clinging," he announced one morning. "Though I cannot see where it leads, I trust that the current knows its destination. I shall let go and allow it to carry me where it will. For I fear that if I continue clinging, I shall die of boredom before I ever truly live." The other creatures gasped in horror. "Fool!" they cried. "Let go, and that current will tumble you mercilessly across the rocks below. You will be battered and broken, dying far more quickly than any boredom could kill you." But the small creature had made his decision. Taking one last look at his neighbors, he released his grip on the familiar stone. Immediately, the current seized him, and just as the others had predicted, he was tumbled and tossed across the rocky bottom. His small body struck stone after stone, each impact bringing pain he had never experienced while safely clinging. Yet something remarkable began to happen. As the creature continued to surrender to the current's power, refusing to grab for new anchors despite his pain, the water gradually lifted him higher from the dangerous bottom. The tumbling ceased. The rocks could no longer reach him. Now he flowed with the current itself, no longer fighting its direction, but becoming one with its movement. As he traveled downstream, creatures in distant parts witnessed something they had never seen. Here was one of their own kind, yet he appeared to be flying through the water, moving with the elegant power of the current itself. "See a miracle," they called out. "A creature like ourselves, yet he soars. Surely he is the Messiah come to save us all." The flowing creature heard their cries and felt compassion for their misunderstanding. "I am no more Messiah than any of you," he called back. "The river delights in lifting us all free, if only we dare to let go. Our true work is not clinging to the bottom, but embracing this voyage, this grand adventure of trust and flow." But the creatures only cried louder, "Savior! Savior!" Even as they spoke, they tightened their grips on rocks and roots. They watched until he disappeared around a bend, then began weaving legends about the miraculous savior who had briefly graced their village. Buddha's wisdom reminds us that you only lose what you cling to. This ancient teaching illuminates the profound paradox at the heart of human experience. We spend our lives grasping for security and control, believing that our safety depends on holding tight to familiar circumstances. Yet, in this very grasping, we create the suffering we seek to avoid. Why do we cling so desperately when the current offers to carry us toward unknown adventures? Zen Buddhism reveals that from early childhood we learn the known is safe and the unknown dangerous. This conditioning becomes a spiritual obstacle when it prevents growth beyond familiar limitations. We also suffer from the illusion of control, believing that by grasping circumstances, relationships, and identities, we can stop the natural flow of change. This creates enormous tension because it puts us in opposition to reality itself. Life is constant movement, and when we resist this truth, we exhaust ourselves fighting currents far more powerful than our individual will. Consider the areas of your life that you find yourself clinging. Perhaps it is a relationship that has outgrown its original form, a career that no longer brings joy, or an image of yourself that now constrains your growth. The current of change will flow whether we resist it or not. Our choice is whether to exhaust ourselves in futile opposition or discover the grace available in conscious surrender. The Buddha said that nothing is permanent except change. Water does not fight the mountainside, it finds the natural pathway down. When we learn to move with life's current rather than against it, we discover an effortless effectiveness that rigid resistance can never achieve. Tonight, as you rest in this moment's stillness, what might you be ready to release? Perhaps it is a worry about tomorrow's challenges, a resentment from yesterday's disappointments, or a way of defining yourself that has grown too small. Can you feel into the current of this moment's aliveness and trust its direction? As the Buddha taught, let go of what is past, let go of what may come, and let go of what is happening now. Relax and rest. In this trust, we discover that the current we feared would destroy us is actually the very force that can carry us home to our true nature. This transformation of our relationship with suffering is perfectly illustrated in a quiet monastery nestled among rolling hills. There lived an aging master renowned for his patience and wisdom. Among his students was a young apprentice whose heart had become heavy with complaints about life's difficulties. Each morning, the apprentice would arrive with fresh grievances. "Master, why is life so hard?"
Yesterday, my meditation was disturbed by noise.
"Today, my back aches from the hard floor. When will the suffering end?" His voice carried the weight of someone who had catalogued every small discomfort until they had grown into an overwhelming burden. The master listened with infinite patience, but as days turned to weeks, he recognized that words alone would not shift his student's perspective. One crisp morning, as golden sunlight streamed through the simple dwelling, the master made an unusual request. "My dear student," he said gently, "I need you to go to the kitchen and bring me some salt. Just a handful will suffice." The apprentice, though puzzled by such a mundane request when he was seeking profound spiritual answers, did as he was told. He returned with his palms cupped, holding coarse white crystals that caught the morning light like tiny, unpolished diamonds. The master then produced a small glass of clear water and placed it on the low table between them. "Now," the master instructed, "place all of that salt into this glass and drink it." The young man hesitated, looking from the salt to the small volume of water. "Master, that seems like far too much salt for such a small amount of liquid. It will be undrinkable." The master simply smiled, his eyes steady and calm. "Trust the process," he replied. "Drink." The apprentice poured the salt into the glass, watching as the crystals swirled and dissolved into a cloudy, unappetizing mixture. He lifted it to his lips and took a large gulp, immediately grimacing as the intensely bitter, stinging taste filled his mouth. He sputtered, nearly choking on the brine. "How does it taste?" the master asked. "Bitter," the apprentice spat, wiping his mouth. "Terribly, overwhelmingly bitter. I can barely stand the thought of another drop." The master chuckled softly, a sound like dry leaves skittering across stone in the gentle breeze. "Excellent. Now bring that same amount of salt and come with me." Together, they walked in contemplative silence, leaving the monastery gates and following a winding path through the woods until they reached the shores of a pristine mountain lake. The water stretched before them like a vast silver mirror, reflecting the sky so perfectly that it was difficult to tell where the earth ended and heaven began. The air was cool and filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. "Now," the master said, gesturing toward the expansive water, "place this handful of salt into the lake." The apprentice waded into the shallow edge and opened his hands, watching as the salt crystals scattered across the surface and vanished instantly into the depths, leaving no visible trace. "Drink from the lake," the master instructed. The young man cupped the cold water in his hands and brought it to his lips. It was clean, refreshing, and held the pure, sweet taste of mountain snow.
"How does it taste?" the master asked. "Much better," the apprentice replied, genuinely surprised by the contrast. "It is clean and pure." "Do you taste the salt?" the master inquired gently. The student paused, paying careful attention to the sensation on his tongue. "No," he said slowly, "I don't taste any salt at all." The master sat beside his student on a smooth stone at the water's edge, his weathered hands reaching out to clasp the young man's hands in profound tenderness. "My dear student," the master said, his voice a low vibration in the quiet air, "the pain of life is pure salt. No more, no less. The amount of pain in existence remains constant, a fundamental part of the human journey. But the amount of bitterness we experience depends entirely on the container we put that pain into. When you are in pain, the only thing you can truly control is your response. You can choose to be a small glass, where every grain of salt overwhelms your senses and poisons your perspective. Or you can choose to enlarge your sense of things, to become like this vast lake, where the same salt dissolves harmlessly into something much greater." The master paused, looking out over the water. "Stop being a glass, my friend. Become a lake." The Buddha once taught that while pain is certain, suffering is optional. This reveals the very heart of our relationship with difficulty. We cannot eliminate the challenges woven into the fabric of existence, but we have tremendous power over how that pain affects us. Our awareness is not fixed in size. It can contract into the narrow confines of a glass, where every difficulty looms enormous and suffocating. Or it can expand into the spaciousness of a lake, where the same difficulties become manageable, even insignificant. We often choose to be the glass because of our tendency toward pain myopia, becoming so focused on discomfort that it fills our entire field of vision. We fall into the habit of story proliferation, taking a single painful event and weaving elaborate narratives about how unfair life is, which only serves to shrink our container. From the perspective of the lake, we can respond to problems more creatively because we are no longer overwhelmed by them. We remember that everything arises and passes away within the vast space of awareness. Today's crisis becomes tomorrow's memory, a tiny ripple on the surface of an infinite body of water. We become a lake through practices that naturally expand our awareness, meditation that teaches us to rest in spacious presence, gratitude that helps us notice the beauty beyond our immediate struggles, and service that reminds us our pain is part of a shared human experience. Tonight, as you reflect on your own challenges, can you sense the difference between experiencing them from the consciousness of a glass versus that of a lake? What would it feel like to allow your awareness to expand beyond the immediate intensity of difficulties to include the vast context of this moment? As the Buddha taught, if you want to know your mind, sit down and observe it. If your mind is clear, happiness will come. The clarity he speaks of is not the absence of salt, but the spaciousness to hold it skillfully. In becoming lakes rather than glasses, we discover that pain can become a gateway to deeper compassion and freedom. Now let us explore a Zen story about the ultimate nature of spiritual truth. This is the encounter between the emperor and the master. In ancient China, there ruled an emperor known throughout the land for his devotion to the Buddhist path. Unlike rulers who concern themselves only with wealth and territory, this emperor had spent years studying sacred texts, supporting monasteries, and seeking the deepest truths of existence. His palace library contained thousands of scrolls, and he had invited many learned monks to share their wisdom. When word reached him of a great Zen master
whose understanding transcended conventional knowledge, the emperor immediately sent an invitation. He longed to test his own understanding against this master's renowned wisdom. The day of the master's arrival, the palace buzzed with anticipation. The emperor had prepared elaborate questions that would demonstrate both his devotion and sophisticated grasp of Buddhist doctrine. Surely such preparation would impress even the most accomplished teacher. When the master entered the throne room, he appeared utterly ordinary. His robes were simple and travel-worn, his bearing humble yet alert. The emperor, seated on his golden throne beneath paintings of Buddhist saints, felt both excited and nervous. "Venerable Master," the emperor began, his voice echoing through the vast hall decorated with precious statues and sacred symbols. "I have studied the Buddhist teachings for many years. I have built temples, supported monks, and devoted my life to understanding the sacred path. Now I ask you, what is the highest truth of the holy Buddhist doctrine?" The emperor leaned forward expectantly, anticipating a profound discourse that would confirm his years of study. Perhaps the master would elaborate on the Four Noble Truths, or reveal some secret teaching passed down through generations. Instead, the master looked directly into the emperor's eyes, with a gaze that seemed to see through all pretense. His response came quietly: vast emptiness, and not a trace of holiness. Silence filled the throne room. The emperor blinked, certain he had misheard. Where was the elaborate explanation of Buddhist cosmology? Where were the references to sacred texts and divine principles? "If there is no holiness," the emperor asked, his voice betraying confusion and dismay, "then who or what are you? If there is no sacred truth to attain, what makes you a master?" The emperor's questions carried the weight of years spent accumulating spiritual knowledge and religious merit. He had built his identity around being a devout Buddhist ruler, and this master's words seemed to dissolve the foundation of that carefully constructed self-image. The master's response came with the same quiet directness: "I do not know." With these three simple words, the master had stripped away every concept, every identity, every claim to understanding that the emperor had accumulated. The master departed as simply as he had arrived, leaving the emperor in contemplative silence. As the Buddha observed, those who think they know don't know. Those who know they don't know truly know. This paradoxical teaching points to the heart of Zen understanding. True wisdom begins not with accumulating knowledge, but with recognizing the limitations of conceptual thinking itself. The deeper teaching here shows us that spiritual seeking often becomes another form of grasping. We collect teachings and insights like precious jewels, believing enlightenment lies in acquiring enough sacred knowledge. But ultimate truth cannot be possessed or described in conventional terms. The master's declaration of vast emptiness points to sunyata, often translated as emptiness. This doesn't mean nothing exists, but that nothing exists in the solid, independent way our thoughts assume. Every phenomenon arises interdependently, without fixed essence. This emptiness is not a concept to understand, but a reality to embody. When the master says there is not a trace of holiness, he's not denying spiritual experience, but pointing to truth that transcends dualistic thinking, separating sacred from ordinary. The very search for holiness implies our present experience lacks something essential, when completeness is already here. Consider how this teaching might illuminate your spiritual journey. Have you noticed how the mind tries to turn insights into possessions? We have powerful experiences and want to understand, categorize, and repeat them. Yet each time we grasp, we move away from the simple presence that made them possible. The emperor represents the sincere seeker who has confused spiritual materialism with genuine awakening. His years of study weren't meaningless, but they had become obstacles to direct recognition of what was always present. The master's "I do not know" represents the wisdom of "don't know" mind. This is not ignorance, but open unknowing that remains receptive to what is actually happening rather than filtering it through preconceptions. From this mind, appropriate action arises without conceptual interference. In our culture that prizes knowledge, admitting "I don't know" feels like failure. But in Zen understanding, this acknowledgement becomes a doorway to fresh perception. The expert mind sees what it expects. The beginner's mind sees what is actually there. Tonight, as you rest in this moment's presence, what would it be like to temporarily set aside everything you think you know about spirituality? Can you taste the freedom in not knowing? The spaciousness that opens when we stop trying to fill emptiness with concepts. As the Buddha taught, in the sky there is no distinction of east and west. People create distinctions out of their own minds and then believe them to be true. The vast emptiness the Master pointed to is infinitely spacious, containing all possibilities while being limited by none. In recognizing this emptiness as our true nature, we discover the most ordinary miracle. This moment exactly as it is, lacking nothing. Let us continue on our journey with a story about discovering the source of true freedom. This is the tale of the student and the master's heart.
In a peaceful monastery garden where cherry blossoms drifted like snow, a young student approached his teacher during evening meditation. The master sat beneath an ancient maple tree, twilight painting the sky in soft purples and golds. This student had been practicing earnestly for years, yet lately questions had been arising that reached deeper than formal instruction. Taking a seat beside his teacher, the student gathered courage to voice what had been troubling him. "Master," he began quietly, "when I was young, I had a deep desire for my family and loved ones to be proud of me. I wanted to excel in studies to accomplish things that would make them beam with joy. Were you ever the same way?" The master turned his gentle gaze toward the student, seeing in the young man's eyes the same earnest longing that had once driven his own seeking. After contemplative silence, he replied simply, "Yes, I was very much the same." The student felt relief at this admission. "Why did you desire their pride so intensely?" he asked. "What was driving that need for approval?" The master smiled with tender recognition. "I wanted them to feel they had more reason to love and accept me," he said thoughtfully. "If I could make them proud, surely their love would be secure and abundant. But the reason I desired this went even deeper." The student leaned closer, sensing they were approaching something essential. "I sought their love so desperately," the master continued, "because I, in turn, would feel I had sufficient reason to love and accept myself. I was seeking permission from others to feel good about who I was. Their approval would be evidence of my worthiness, even to myself. That was what lay at the root of all my striving." The master paused, watching the first stars appear in the deepening blue. But then, one day, I awakened to a revolutionary possibility. I realized I could ask myself a different question. What if I could bypass all external validation and simply learn to love and accept myself unconditionally? What if I didn't require anyone else's approval to feel genuinely good about my existence? The student felt something shift in his chest as these words settled. I imagined what it would be like if my happiness no longer depended on outer circumstances, on whether people approved or disapproved of my choices. What if my sense of worth could be as constant as my own heartbeat,
independent of any external validation. The student could feel his teacher's words pointing toward a freedom he had never considered. And that realization began your quest for self-realization? Exactly, the master nodded. That was when my true spiritual journey began. Not with seeking something outside myself, but with discovering what was already complete within.
After contemplative silence, the student asked, "And did you never again desire their pride? Did that longing completely disappear?"
The master chuckled softly. Oh, my ego certainly continued to desire approval. Conditioned patterns don't vanish overnight, but something fundamental had shifted in my relationship to those desires. I no longer completely identified with my ego as I had before. He gestured toward the darkening garden, where fireflies had begun their dance. I learned to see those approval-seeking thoughts as passing phenomena, like these fireflies appearing and disappearing. I could observe them with interest and compassion, but I no longer gave them power to determine my worth. So, you still cared what others thought? The student asked. I respected their opinions and honored their perspectives, the master replied. But I no longer gave them so much weight.
Their approval became like weather, sometimes pleasant, sometimes not, but no longer the determining factor in whether I felt at peace with myself.
The master's face radiated quiet joy, and never had I felt so free as when I finally released myself in this way. It was like discovering I had been carrying invisible chains for decades, and suddenly they fell away. The love I had been seeking outside was revealed to have been within me all along. Buddha's wisdom reminds us, if you truly loved yourself, you would never hurt yourself with destructive thoughts, actions, or choices. This teaching points to the heart of the master's discovery. Most suffering stems from the mistaken belief that we must earn the right to love ourselves through external achievements or approval. Here we discover one of the most revolutionary insights available. Self-love is not a reward to be earned, but our natural birthright to be claimed. We are born complete and worthy, not because of what we accomplish, but simply because we exist. Why do we find unconditional self-love so difficult? From childhood, we absorb messages suggesting love must be earned through good behavior, achievement, or pleasing others. We learn to treat ourselves the way we were treated, often with criticism and conditions. These patterns become so familiar that unconditional self-acceptance feels foreign. Our culture intensifies this conditioning by promoting the myth that happiness comes from external sources. Each message reinforces the delusion that we are incomplete as we are. Consider how much mental energy goes toward managing others' opinions. How often do you modify authentic expression to gain approval? How much self-worth depends on external feedback rather than internal recognition of inherent value? When we love ourselves unconditionally, we create a foundation of fulfillment that allows us to enjoy others' affection without depending on it. We can receive compliments with gratitude rather than desperate hunger, and handle criticism without devastation because our core worth remains untouched. The Buddha said, "You can search throughout the entire universe for someone more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself, and that person is not to be found anywhere. You yourself deserve your love and affection." This isn't narcissism. It's recognition of a fundamental truth about consciousness itself. Tonight, as you rest in this moment's quiet, can you sense the presence that is reading these words? This awareness that knows your thoughts and witnesses your experiences is not improved or diminished by anything that happens.
It remains constant and clear, like space itself.
What would it be like to treat this aware presence with the tenderness it deserves?
Perhaps you could offer yourself the same patience you'd give a beloved child learning, or the same compassion you'd feel for a friend in difficulties. As the Buddha taught, hatred is never appeased by hatred. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. Self-criticism is never healed by more self-criticism. Only by learning to love ourselves exactly as we are do we create inner conditions for authentic transformation. In discovering this unconditional love within, we find the freedom we sought through others' approval was always here, beating steadily in our own hearts. Let us now turn to a tale about the nature of seeking and finding. This is the master sculptor's discovery. In a bustling stone quarry beneath towering mountains, a master sculptor moved among the marble blocks with the practiced eye of one who had spent decades coaxing beauty from stone. The morning sun cast golden light across the quarry, illuminating countless blocks that seemed to whisper their stories to him. "Aha," he would say, running his weathered hands across smooth surfaces. "There is a heroic figure locked in that piece, and a saint trapped inside that other one." His reputation had grown precisely because of this gift, his ability to sense what he called the suchness of every stone, to see beyond raw material to its true nature, waiting to be released. But on this morning, the sculptor's heart carried a different weight. For over 40 years, he had been searching for something special, the perfect block from which he could create his masterwork, a glorious statue of the Buddha. His energies were waning now, and still this elusive Buddha block remained hidden from him. He had traveled to great quarries around the world, consulted experts, and hired specialists to scour remote areas. Yet nowhere could he find that one perfect slab that would allow him to release the most perfect likeness of Buddha. Feeling the weight of his lifelong quest, the sculptor sought consolation from a local Zen priest who headed a small temple at the end of his street. The temple was modest, with a peaceful courtyard where a stone well sat, surrounded by carefully tended moss. "Master," the sculptor said, bowing deeply, "I have searched for 40 years for the perfect stone from which to carve the Buddha. My life's work remains incomplete." The priest listened with kind eyes, then smiled gently. "No problem," he said with such simplicity that the sculptor felt both confused and hopeful. "Do you mean you can tell me where I might find the perfect material from which I can release the Buddha of my dreams?" the sculptor asked, excitement rising in his voice. "Of course. Where?" The priest raised his hand and pointed across the courtyard. "Over there," he said, indicating the stone well. The sculptor hurried to the well and peered down into the still, dark water. There, looking back at him with the same questioning eyes and the same lined face marked by years of searching, was his own reflection. Buddha's wisdom reminds us that if you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? The deeper teaching here shows us that what we seek most desperately often lies not in some distant place or perfect circumstance, but in the very ground of our own being. Why do we exhaust ourselves searching everywhere except within? Zen Buddhism reveals that we become so focused on the object of our search that we forget to examine the searcher. The sculptor had examined thousands of stones and traveled countless miles, yet never considered that the very consciousness doing the seeking was itself the perfect material for awakening. Consider how often throughout your day you postpone contentment, waiting for better circumstances. I'll be happy when I get the promotion, when I find the right partner, or when conditions are finally perfect. This is seeking the Buddha block everywhere, except in the reflection looking back at us right now. Zen Master Huang Bo taught that your everyday mind is the way. The sculptor's profound realization wasn't that he needed to become something different, but that he needed to recognize what he already was. The perfect material for expressing Buddha nature isn't found in external circumstances, but in the awareness that recognizes, seeks, and creates. The well represents the still point within consciousness, where seeking ends and finding begins. When we stop looking outward and peer into the depths of our own awareness, we discover that the one who seeks and the sought are the same.
In Zen practice, we speak of the original face, the essential nature that exists before conditioning. This original face isn't hidden in some special place. It's looking back at us from every mirror and every moment of genuine presence. Tonight, as you encounter the reflection of your own seeking mind, can you recognize the Buddha nature that has been with you all along? Perhaps it appears in your capacity for wonder, your longing for truth, or simply in the awareness that notices these very words. As the Buddha taught, look within, you are the Buddha. The masterwork you've been seeking isn't waiting for perfect materials. It's waiting for the recognition that the artist, the art, and the awareness that appreciates beauty are all expressions of the same essential nature. This understanding that truth is found in the most ordinary of places brings us to the journey of another man who worked with the stone of the earth, but in a way that led him through every possible transformation. High in the mountain villages, there lived a simple stone cutter who had discovered the secret of happiness without knowing it. Each dawn, he would climb winding paths to the quarries, his tools balanced across his shoulders. As he worked among the stones, he would sing old mountain songs that echoed across the valleys. Though he was poor by society's measures, living in a modest hut with few possessions, the stonecutter desired nothing more than what he had. His simple life felt complete. The rhythm of his work, the beauty of the mountains, and the satisfaction of honest labor. His heart held not a care in the world. One day, he was called to work on the grand mansion of a wealthy nobleman.
As he approached the estate, his eyes widened at the magnificence before him. Marble columns reached toward the sky, and gardens sprawled in perfect symmetry. For the first time in his life, the stonecutter felt the sharp pang of desire pierce his contentment. "If only I were rich," he sighed. "Then I would not have to earn my living in sweat and toil as I do now." To his amazement, a voice whispered from the stones, "Your wish has been granted. Henceforth, anything you desire will be given to you." He returned home that evening to find his humble hut replaced by a mansion as magnificent as the nobleman's. Overwhelmed with joy, he abandoned his tools and began enjoying the luxurious life of the wealthy. But one hot afternoon, gazing from his ornate window, he saw the king's royal procession passing by. The monarch sat in cool shade, surrounded by noblemen and servants, appearing serene and powerful above the common heat.
How I wish I were a king myself, he thought, and immediately found himself reclining on silk cushions within a royal carriage. But the carriage proved warmer than expected. Even through thick walls, the sun's heat penetrated relentlessly. "I wish I were the sun," he declared, and found himself sending waves of light and heat across the universe. As the sun, he felt magnificent and all-powerful, until thick storm clouds gathered, completely blocking his rays. "I wish to be a cloud," he cried, and so he became a massive storm cloud, glorying in his power to block the sun. But as he transformed into falling rain, he encountered an enormous rock that blocked his path completely. A mere rock more powerful than I wish to be a rock. Suddenly, he stood tall upon the mountainside, feeling he had achieved true permanence. But soon he heard chipping sounds at his base. Looking down, he saw a tiny human figure cutting chunks of stone away. A puny creature more powerful than me. I want to be a man again. And so he found himself once more a stonecutter, climbing the familiar mountain paths. But now, something had changed. As he shaped stones and felt the mountain breezes, his heart swelled with deep contentment. His song returned, richer than before, because he had learned to be content with exactly who he was. The Buddha once said, "Health is the greatest gift, contentment the greatest wealth." This ancient wisdom illuminates the endless cycle of wanting that keeps us from recognizing the abundance already present in our lives. Why do we chase after different conditions, always believing happiness lies in the next transformation? Each desire fulfilled only reveals the next desire, creating an endless cycle of dissatisfaction. The stonecutter's journey reveals the futility of seeking happiness through external circumstances. Consider your own versions of this cycle.
I'll be happy when I get promoted, only to discover new stresses.
I'll be content with more money, only to find greater wealth brings new worries. Each achievement reveals the next mountain to climb. Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi said, "Each of you is perfect the way you are, and you can use a little improvement." This paradox points to the heart of contentment, the ability to fully accept what is, while still engaging wholeheartedly with life's natural changes. The stonecutter's final transformation wasn't into something greater, but into an appreciation for what he had always been. Contentment isn't found in having different experiences, but in bringing a different awareness to whatever experiences arise. Tonight, as you notice the mind's habitual reaching toward what's not here, can you experiment with the stonecutter's final wisdom? Can you find the song that emerges when you stop trying to be anything other than what you are?
As the Buddha taught, contentment is natural wealth. Luxury is artificial poverty. The greatest transformation available isn't becoming something different, but recognizing the inherent completeness of what we already are. Now, let us experience a Zen story about the unexpected nature of enlightenment. This is the kitchen monk's realization. In the serene mountains surrounding Lake Hakone stood a great monastery known throughout Japan for its rigorous practice and deep wisdom. Among the monks lived a humble man named Ichi, whose life would teach us about the profound difference between seeking and finding. For 55 years, Ichi had labored faithfully in the monastery kitchen, while other monks sat in formal meditation or engaged in scholarly debates. Ichi chopped vegetables, tended fires, and prepared meals with quiet dedication. His hands had grown permanently stained, his back bent from years of service, yet he approached each task with careful attention. But Ichi carried a heavy burden. Since his earliest days, he had been assigned a koan, one of those paradoxical questions that Zen masters use to crack open the thinking mind. His was the famous puzzle, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Day after day, year after year, he wrestled with this question, trying to solve it through logic, intuition, and every approach his mind could devise. As decades passed, Ichi began to see himself as a failure. While other monks seemed to progress, receiving new koans or achieving insights their teachers acknowledged, Ichi remained stuck with his unsolved puzzle.
He watched younger monks arrive and eventually surpass him in status and recognition. 55 years, he would whisper while stirring soup. 55 years, and still I cannot hear what one hand sounds like when it claps.
The question haunted him through every chore, every quiet moment, every season of his long service. Now, as his body grew frail, Ichi knew his time was approaching its end. He had been moved to a small attic room where he could rest away from the daily bustle. As he lay there in the gathering twilight of his life, something unexpected began to happen. Gradually, the familiar weight of striving began to lift from his chest. The desperate need to solve his koan, the shame of perceived failure, the constant reaching for enlightenment, all of it slowly dissolved like mist at sunrise. Gone was the fierce desire for awakening that had driven him for decades. In place of all that seeking, Ichi discovered something he had never expected, a profound peace that seemed to cradle his entire being. The soft darkness felt not like defeat, but like the gentlest embrace. His breathing slowed, and with it, the churning of thoughts that had occupied his mind for so many years. It was in this exquisite silence, when there remained no more questions, nor need for answers, when even the need for breathing seemed to fade into quiet acceptance, that Ichi finally heard it. The whooshing silence of one hand clapping filled his awareness, not as a sound, but as the very nature of existence itself. It was the sound that had been present all along, beneath all the noise of seeking. Buddha spoke of this when he said, "Cease to cherish opinions, and you will achieve enlightenment." Here we discover that enlightenment isn't something we attain through effort, but something we uncover when the effort finally ceases. Why do we struggle so intensely with the very seeking that prevents us from finding what we seek? The mind creates a fundamental split between the seeker and the sought, keeping us perpetually reaching for something we imagine exists elsewhere, in some future moment when we'll finally get it. Ichi's story illuminates what Zen calls beginner's mind, the fresh awareness that exists before we complicate it with goals and achievements. For 55 years, he had sophisticated simple presence into complex spiritual ambition. The more expertly he sought enlightenment, the further he moved from the naturally enlightened awareness that had been with him all along. Consider how often we create this pattern. We complicate natural joy with the pursuit of happiness. We obscure natural love with the search for perfect relationships. We cover natural wisdom with the endless accumulation of knowledge. Ichi's realization came not through solving his koan, but through finally letting go of the need to solve it. The sound of one hand clapping isn't a riddle to be figured out, but an invitation to rest in the space before thinking begins, the awareness that exists prior to questions and answers. Tonight, as thoughts about your own spiritual journey arise, remember Ichi's profound discovery. What if the very awareness that notices your seeking is the enlightenment you've been seeking? The sound of one hand clapping might be closer than you think, in the very listening that hears all sounds, including silence. As the Buddha taught, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Sometimes the greatest achievement is the willingness to stop achieving and simply rest in what has always been present. As we continue our journey, let us now turn to a story about acceptance and the art of contentment. This is the shepherd's wisdom. Along a dusty mountain road where wildflowers dotted the hillsides, a weary traveler encountered a shepherd tending his flock. The morning sun climbed steadily higher, and clouds gathered on the horizon, creating an uncertain sky that could promise either gentle rain or scorching heat. The shepherd sat peacefully on a smooth boulder, watching his sheep graze contentedly among wild grasses. His face bore the calm expression of one who had spent countless seasons under the open sky, learning lessons that only nature can teach. There was something in his demeanor, a quality of unshakable serenity that drew the traveler's attention. "Good morning, friend," the traveler called out, wiping sweat from his brow. "What kind of weather are we going to have today?" The shepherd looked up with eyes that held mountain stream clarity and smiled with genuine warmth.
"The kind of weather I like," he replied simply, as if this were the most obvious answer in the world. The traveler paused, confused. He had expected a practical forecast that would help him plan his day. Instead, he received what seemed like circular logic, offering no useful information. "How do you know it will be the kind of weather you like?" the traveler pressed, his voice carrying frustration mixed with curiosity. The shepherd's smile deepened, and he gestured towards the vast sky above them, where clouds and clear patches moved in their eternal dance. "Having found out, sir, that I cannot always get what I like," he said, with the patience of one who had learned life's most essential lesson, "I have learned to always like what I get, so I am quite sure we will have the kind of weather I like." The traveler stood in silence, the profound simplicity of this wisdom settling into his understanding like seeds finding fertile ground.
Here was a man who had discovered something that all the weather predictions in the world could not provide: complete freedom from the anxiety of uncertainty. As the Buddha observed, attachment is the root of suffering. What emerges from this story is the recognition that true contentment comes not from controlling external circumstances, but from transforming our relationship to whatever circumstances arise. Why do we exhaust ourselves trying to arrange life according to our preferences, rather than learning to find peace within whatever life presents? The shepherd represents what Zen calls great acceptance, not passive resignation, but the profound wisdom that recognizes resistance to reality as the primary source of suffering. When we fight against what is, we create an internal war that drains our energy and blocks our capacity for contentment. When we learn to align ourselves with reality as it unfolds, we discover the tremendous peace that comes from swimming with the current rather than against it. Consider how much mental and emotional energy we spend each day resisting circumstances beyond our control. Traffic jams, weather that doesn't match our plans, people who don't behave as we think they should. Each resistance creates a small contraction in our awareness, a tiny rebellion against reality that accumulates into chronic dissatisfaction. The shepherd's approach doesn't mean becoming passive or ceasing to have preferences. We can still hope for sunny days while fully accepting rainy ones. We can work toward goals while finding peace when outcomes differ from expectations. The key lies in holding our preferences lightly, rather than allowing them to determine our contentment. Zen master Sengchan wrote, "The great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences." This doesn't suggest eliminating all desires, but rather not allowing those desires to become demands that reality must fulfill for us to be okay. Look deeply at your own patterns of resistance. How often do you find yourself arguing with reality, wishing circumstances were different, or believing you'll be content when things change? This tension is optional, not because you should suppress your desires, but because you can learn to hold them more skillfully. The Buddha taught that attachment doesn't mean caring deeply about things. It means making our inner peace conditional on external circumstances, arranging themselves according to our specifications. The shepherd cares about his flock and appreciates comfort, but his fundamental contentment doesn't depend on any particular outcome. Tonight, as you reflect on the day's experiences, both pleasant and challenging, can you find the shepherd's secret within your own awareness?
What if contentment isn't waiting for better circumstances,
but is available right now through a shift in perspective. As the Buddha taught, happiness does not depend on what you have or who you are. It solely relies on what you think. The shepherd discovered that when we stop demanding that life conform to our expectations, we find the freedom to enjoy life exactly as it presents itself. Tonight, as we complete this journey through ancient wisdom, can you recognize that the peace you've been seeking through these stories was never separate from your present awareness? Can you feel how each teaching points not to distant truths, but to the immediate reality of this moment? Your breath, your heartbeat, the simple miracle of being awake and listening. As the Buddha taught, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Let us reflect on the path we've traveled together.
Each story has offered a unique window into the same essential understanding: that wisdom, compassion, and awakening are available here and now, not in some imagined future or special circumstance. The samurai at the gate revealed how heaven and hell exist in our own minds, created by the quality of our reactions. The captured warrior showed us that tomorrow's fears exist only in thought, while peace dwells in present moment awareness. The serious monk discovered that spiritual seeking becomes its own trap when we cannot receive joy and laughter as teaching. The eager student learned that dividing attention between path and goal actually delays the very understanding we seek. And the king in his palace recognized that all appositions and possessions are temporary dwellings in the inn of existence. Through each tale, the same luminous truth emerges. What we search for through practice, study, and seeking is never absent from ordinary experience. The Buddha nature we hope to cultivate is the very awareness with which we approach each moment of learning. These stories invite us not to accumulate more knowledge, but to recognize what we already are. They point us toward a way of being that transforms suffering into wisdom, reactivity into response, and grasping into graceful letting go. The Buddha taught, 3 things cannot long remain hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. As you continue on your own path, may these ancient teachings accompany you, not as concepts to remember, but as invitations to experience life with greater presence, compassion, and awakening. May you recognize that the very capacity to listen, to reflect, and to seek understanding is itself the enlightened awareness that needs no improvement.
When challenges arise, remember the samurai's choice between heaven and hell. When anxiety about the future appears, recall the warrior's return to this moment. When you take yourself too seriously, hear the Master's liberating laughter. When urgency clouds your practice, remember that both eyes belong on the path. And when you feel attached to temporary things, smile at the inn that calls itself a palace. Thank you for sharing this contemplative journey with us here at night. If these stories have brought you a sense of peace, consider joining our community by subscribing and sharing your thoughts in the comments. We find great joy in hearing how these ancient truths touch your modern life. May you rest peacefully tonight, carrying these timeless teachings gently into tomorrow's light, knowing that the wisdom you seek is as close as your next conscious breath. Sleep well, friend.